Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Anthony Iannarino wants you to go on a negativity fast. Today, he'll tell us how and why. Anthony, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, Anthony, that's the title of your book. Am I correct? The Negativity Fast?
That's correct.
And I told you, as soon as I saw that, I said, this is a book I'm going to love. And from the first line, I did, and I still do. I'm having a lot of fun with it. You say the goal of your book is to reduce the time we spend in a negative state. Of our waking hours, can you give us a percentage of that, or how much time do we spend thinking negative thoughts?
Most of it. Most of it. And there's a lot of reasons for this. When you start doing the research on negativity, you'll learn some things about things like negativity bias and how these things have come about, of us being more negative than positive. And you really start to understand most of the time your brain is trying to protect you from everything at all times. So one of the things that it's doing is trying to keep us alive. And because we are from the Paleolithic time, there were a lot of threats. So that's what the brain is doing, is trying to keep us alive, which is not always easy for some people to do that because they're reckless. But most of the time we have 50 to 80,000 thoughts. Most of them are negative, and we mostly keep repeating them to ourselves over and over again. So this is how you end up being very negative without even trying.
And that's why I guess you want us to go on this fast.
Absolutely.
It sounds like a good idea. Now, you tell us that 5 of our 7 dominant emotions are negative. Can you talk about that and tell us why, what the 5 out of 7 are?
Yeah, so this is Ekman's research. So the dominant emotions are, so this is always, it's always funny to me that there's only one really good thing in here. Anger, contempt, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, and surprise. So if you thought surprise is a good one, not always.
Right.
Sometimes it's not good at all. So I think the only one that we really have that's a good one is happiness. And that's it. The rest of the time, those are not our emotions.
Now, when you say in your book, we are the people we have been waiting for, what does that really mean?
If you're waiting for somebody to come and help you with this, you've been waiting a long enough time. So we're finally here. Like, you're reading it. I've wrote it. I've given it to, I think we sold close to 3,000 copies in the first week. So we got a national bestseller. And I think it's because people are tired of feeling bad, tired of feeling negative, and we're post-pandemic. And so if there was ever a time to produce a book like this, this is the time.
Oh, definitely so. In fact, you're the expert, but to me, just as the everyday person, I think we are surrounded by more negativity. And whether I pick up my phone, look at the news feed, turn the TV on, the radio, and of course, anywhere you go, I'm in the car, the radio's on. Went to the doctor's today, there's a TV on. Of course, the news show is the general show they put on. And it just seems to be more and more negative. If we pick up a newspaper, which is getting rarer, but it happens, what's the headline? Some train crashed, car crashed, criminal shot 3 people in a mall or 20 people in a mall. So it's very easy, I guess, to fall into negativity and make it part of our life. You talked about a negativity bias, and we've heard that term. First of all, can you tell us what that means? And you say there's 4 components. Can you address those?
Yeah, negativity bias means we're more negative than we are positive. And the 4 ways that scientists look at this, the first thing, they call it negative potency. So our negative emotions are a lot stronger than our positive emotions. Now, you would think that that would be better. Like if something really good happened, you'd be really positive. It disappears really fast, but the negative stuff stays with us. And then they have this one thing that they call steeper gradients because they're scientists and they're trying to impress each other with their language, as you know. And sometimes they're trying to have a conversation that's just really between scientists and not you and me. But all this term means is that as you get closer to a negative event, you start to become more negative as you get there. So if you had we're going to the court tomorrow, the closer you get there, the more you're going to feel negative as you go. And then there's this is Kahneman, who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. This is his research. If you lost $50 and then 15 minutes later, you found $200, you'd be still more unhappy about losing the 50 than gaining the 150 that you have. I have no idea, but that's a human thing. And Kahneman's one of the best. And then the last thing is just the differentiation. Our brain has to use a lot of resources to process negativity, and it doesn't have so much of a chore when it comes to positive things. So you would think that we would be more positive than negative, but the truth is we're more negative than positive.
And as you mentioned before, in some senses, it's a good thing, I guess, to be negative. If we're walking down a dark street, we may look into the alley or look around us a little more because we're apprehensive that some type of crime or incident could happen, car could jump the curb, etc. So it's good for protective reasons, going back to caveman days, as you talked about. But today, with all that surrounds us, we've got a short time on Earth, relatively 50, 60, 80, maybe 90 years. And every day, if the majority of our thoughts are leading to negativity, that can't be good for us from a health aspect. Am I correct with that?
4,108 weeks on average. That's 78.2. And the reason that number is lower, and it keeps going lower, is two things: suicide and fentanyl. So we'll probably live longer than our 78.2 because those two things won't happen. But that is why the number is down to that low number. It went way up when people stopped smoking, and now it's on its way back down again.
Well, anytime we have on Earth, and I think for any of us, and whatever age our oldest listener is, if he or she is in their 80s or 90s, whether you have 10 months, 10 days, or 10 years, or whatever time, you want to enjoy it. Well, why? We don't want these negative. And that's what I like so much about your book. You kind of alert us to this. And at least some of the time now, after hearing this show, and hopefully people go out and grab hold of this book, and it's a very easy read, a fun read, and something that'll make you very popular at cocktail parties. Just learning about why we're so negative and what and how we can change these things. Now, let me ask you the role of technology. People say, and we have guests on the show, that we're more negative today because of that. And in a way, I would think it would be better. The phone makes things easy. We have the internet. We should have more free time each day. And yet it seems like we're more tense, we're stressed, more in a negative zone. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that happened. So one of the things that happened is you're a few years older than I am.
I'm older than everybody.
Do you remember when you watched Walter Cronkite?
I do.
And everybody did, right?
Exactly. Uncle Walter.
And that was, everybody's getting the same thing from Walter Cronkite. So everybody, that's what they were watching. And now we have Fox News and we have MSNBC, and Fox caters to people who are more conservative and MSNBC caters to people who are more liberal. And now they've decided that the business model is to separate these two groups into warring tribes so we can hold this group and they can hold the other group. And then we can argue with each other about politics all the time. But when you were in the time when Cronkite was the news person for everybody, there wasn't that much news coming in. It wasn't a 24-hour cycle. It was at 6 o'clock, Cronkite's on till 7 o'clock, and then it's over. But now that when you said you went to the DMV, there's a TV. Yeah. So the TV's always on. The radio's always on. You're always getting bad news. You don't hear any good news. Nobody tells you that Mrs. Johnson had another baby and it's healthy. And I mean, you don't hear anything that's good news. if it's not bleeding, then it's not leading. So that's how it works now.
And it's good for the stations. It brings in listeners.
And then add social media. And pretty soon you've got everywhere you look, it's negativity.
But that's good for you because that's why people read your book, to get out of that. So we're going to ask you more, Anthony, but at this point in the show, we want to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Anthony Iannarino, Iannarino. The book is The Negativity Fast. And Anthony, can you tell us, is there a website where we can learn more about this?
Yeah, if you go to thesalesblog.com and then just type in negativity, you'll get there.
And it's the sales blog or blog.
Yeah, blog.com.
Yeah. Okay, good enough. You mentioned in your book a book that I read years ago. It was called Future Shock. And yes. I think it was around the 1970s, if I'm correct. And even then, Alvin Toffler, I think he just passed away, was the author. And even then he said, we're going to be overwhelmed by change.
Yeah.
How does somebody know this 50, 60 years before it even happens?
But it was actually before Future Shock. He wrote this quote that showed up in Future Shock, that unless man quickly learns to control the rate of change in his personal affairs, as well as in society at large, we are doomed to a massive adaptational breakdown. That was 1965 in a magazine called Horizon. How he knew, I have no idea. I mean, he's a futurist, but he was a good one. He was right on spot. So do you believe that we're in the adaptational breakdown period?
I definitely think there's a breakdown. I'm not sure I know what that term means completely, so I don't know how to answer that.
We can't adapt to our environment because it's going faster than we can.
Then I believe. Yes, I'm a believer.
Yeah. And so now we have AI, right?
That just showed artificial information, correct?
Yeah. So we have more of that now. So it's very, very difficult for us to keep up with these things. So that does make it more negative for us.
And we've had guests on the show, and when I asked them, are the computers going to take over, and are we really still in control? And these are very intelligent, professors, etc., scientists. They admit they don't know. We might be at the mercy of those computers, and I think I just read something where the computers didn't want their owners to know what they were discussing between them. It almost sounds like two pets who are planning to do something to you. And the computers would negotiate back and forth.
Bill, we have the upper hand because we have thumbs. we can just unplug them.
Well, that's what I asked them too. I said, "Is that the key? Did somebody have to unplug them at night?" But I think there's a lot more to it that I don't know about. So I'll leave that for another show. Let's say an event happens, and one thing we all know: somebody cuts us off or takes our parking space, and we get furious. And it'll pass, and it's not a major thing. We can probably get another space, go another 20 or 30 feet in the parking lot, and we're there. But you say it's not the event, but your interpretation of the event. I think you used an example, waiting in the airport, or you talked about. Can you expound on that a little more and tell us how we can maybe get better control over that?
This came from my younger brother, who happens to be a comedian, and he drives all over. And he didn't like the way a lot of people drive. And he complained about it for a very long time. And then one day he saw a guy trying to run in front of him. And he realized that this guy really needed to get to a rest stop. Now, did he really know that by looking at the guy's face? I have no idea. But what he decided to do was to just believe that everybody who's driving bad has something going on in their life that would be uncomfortable. So maybe you have to get to the restroom. Maybe you just picked up a prescription for your sick child, right? And I said, all you're doing is you're lying to yourself. Like, you don't know if anything that's true. And he goes, yeah, but once I lie to myself about that, I don't have to worry about it anymore. And he just lets everybody go in front of him. It doesn't matter. And now he's a lot better of a person because he's able to say, I don't know what's going on. They would do better if they could. And maybe they can't right now.
And that's really a great way to do it, but just attribute it to something else that either they're in a rush. In fact, I'll be honest with you, as a driver, occasionally I cut someone off. Not intentionally. Sometimes they get into, I guess, what's called the blind spot in my mirror. I don't see them, and they're just in that spot. And then, of course, I'll move into that lane, and they'll pass me and look at me with great anger or give me a finger gesture or something. But it's certainly not intentional. Had I realized they were that close, I wouldn't risk it or take that chance. And it applies to, I guess, what your brother's saying. If they stopped and thought, this guy probably isn't going to risk his life just to get a spot ahead of them, it would relieve them and make life a lot easier for all of us.
I believe that's true.
Negativity, according to your book, you say this comes from our fears. What is it we're afraid of, or is there a standard fear, or is it just we magnify fears?
We magnify our fears all the time. It's when you care about something and you think that it's at risk, or you think that something bad or negative is going to happen, that is one of the ways that make us negative, is because we're afraid that we'll lose something or something will go wrong. And something will cause us to have more problems than we already have. And so, I worry about people who have fears. I sort of learned over time to not accept the first fear. The first fear is something could go wrong. The second fear is I don't want to do anything. So I always just go with the second one and try to do whatever I can to mitigate whatever's going to happen, because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I'm going to do what I can to make it better if it's possible to do something like that. It is a lot of our fears that make us negative. And why wouldn't it be? Negativity bias is looking for all these things at all times.
Now, you mentioned, too, you say beware of being fed other people's fears. And I admit, I have mine, and I'm probably the person who would be termed a worrywart. If I don't have a fear, I'll look for one. What can I worry about? Well, is this going to happen next week? Or how about at the end of next month?
Yeah.
I may not even be alive then. So many things could happen by the end of next month. What am I really worrying about? But what do you mean by that when you say being fed other people's fears?
Well, we'll go back to television. What are the news shows doing? They're feeding you their fears to keep you agitated, listening, staying on the television with them while they go through all these things. If I were to do two things to make people feel better, the first thing I would tell you to do is to turn off all of the cable news channel newses. Just take all of them off. You will have people say something like, what if something bad happens? All the negative people are going to tell you. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to have a whole bunch of people telling you, hey, did you see this thing that happened? And I don't. And a lot of the reason sometimes my wife is, let's say, a little miffed with me is because she'll say, did you see this story? And I'm like, nope. And she's like, I can't believe you didn't see that. I wasn't part of it. Why do I have to be part of it now? I know bad things happen, and I know that people want to talk about them, but I'm not going to sit in front of a TV and just consume those fears over and over again. I think it's made people more negative than they already were. Honestly,
and this is well before I read your book, I avoid the news also because it's usually not going to make me happier at the end of it. I would rather watch an old comedy, and I'll put them on the VCR and watch that show. And if something is really that important, of a national interest or a local mall shooting or something, there will be a little banner that'll run below it somewhere, and it will say shooting in local mall, stay inside or something. And of course, that's very rare, but we will get the notice. So it's not likely I'm going to miss anything worthwhile. And at least it keeps me in a much happier state, because I think we're getting enough bad news. We don't need to add to it and actually reach out and say, come on into my living room. Tell me more bad things. I don't know why we would want that. Anthony, once again, I want our audience to know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Anthony Iannarino, Iannarino. He's the author of The Negativity Fast. Anthony, would you tell us a little more about the book and the website where we can learn more?
You know, the best place to go for the book would probably be Amazon.com. or Barnes and Noble. Both of those are, they should be carried at both of those two things. What I would say about this book, if you want to feel better, this book is basically 11 or 12 practical strategies that you can do. And if I could leave listeners with just one thing, Martin Seligman is known as the father of positive psychology. And he has these things that he has people do called 3 blessings. And what you do is you write down 3 good things that happened to you during the day and then why they went well for you. And if you do that for 2 weeks, Seligman will say it reduces stress, anxiety, and depression for as long as 6 months. It's more powerful than psychoanalysis, and it's more powerful than pharmaceuticals. So that is the person that's at the top of this hierarchy, and this is what he believes you can do. But it would be really nice if we would have taught these things to people when they're in maybe 8th grade or something like that. But you hear this now for the first time, and you're not in 8th grade anymore. It would be really nice to have these strategies when you're going through your teenage years and high school and college and all of those things. So I'm thinking I might have to do a rewrite and do it for teens and just a little past that.
It would really be great to get the college on board with it, because I do think this is something we need. And as a radio host, and we've been on now, this is our 35th year, I can tell you more and more, especially in the last 5 to 7 years, guests are talking about stress, anxiety, what this is doing to us, mental health. And these issues are coming up more and more and with more force because of the, I'm going to call it the overload of information we have, the negativity.
Yeah.
Are we going to have a job? Are we going to lose our job? Well, it's not exciting if they say no. So they have to scare us a little bit and say, yes, this is going to happen. Or you have a 1 out of 6 chance of your plane crashing or your car having an accident. My gosh, if we take all those numbers, we're not going to make it to the end of the day. So why even do anything? Let's just sit in a chair and wait for that cloud to crash on us and go through with that.
I just try to remind people this. Have you ever had ice cream?
Sure. Love
Pretty
it.
good, isn't it? You ever have a pizza?
You know me too well, or you've got
pretty
something
good, right?
watching me. Yeah,
You have a dog?
I do.
Dogs are great, aren't they?
They're wonderful.
Yeah. But why would anyone want to leave here? This is a good place, isn't it?
And you know, I love what you are saying about the 3 things a day. I'm sure if we really analyzed our day and said, first of all, I told you complaining about cutting someone off by mistake. I'm very fortunate to own a car. Not that other people don't, but it's my car. I own it. I can go where and when I want. Some people in other countries are limited to traveling on foot or with an animal that they must use to move back and forth, or a very old vehicle, or just means of transportation. Maybe it doesn't even exist in that country, or it's not accessible to them. Simple things, the food on the table. There are countries in war where I'm sure food is scarce. And so many things that we have. And if we literally, as you said, if we just be thankful for 3 of them, perhaps a good spouse, a good family, that good dog you talked about, or that wonderful pizza and ice cream that's not good for my waistline but does make me happy. So we all have a lot of those good things.
You got a short time here, 4,000 weeks. So if you want the ice cream, eat that ice cream.
I'm going to tell my wife that. Our guest said, according to Anthony, I should eat that ice cream. Now, let me ask you, along with looking at the positive things and picking out 3 things a day, what other actions would help? We hear positive self-talk, affirmations. What are your favorites? What are some of the things that we could do to
I'm going to give the 3 blessings is an easy one. I have to give you the difficult one. The difficult one is called radical acceptance.
I just checked that off, right?
Yeah. Radical acceptance is if you can't do anything about this, you just let it go. You just accept that this is how it is, and you move on with your life without spending all that time in negativity, suffering from that. And it's hard to do. It's probably the hardest thing to say to somebody is just let it go. And you're like, yeah, but no, I'm all wound up by this already. I can't just let it go. But if you let it go, you're free. The Buddha said something like, anger is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies. It doesn't work that way. You're only hurting you. And boy, anger is really bad for you, and complaining is bad for you. Both of them have not only mental problems, that means that you'll have lesser mental health. It also will it'll be bad for your heart. It's bad for inflammation. It's bad for blood pressure. It's so bad. And complaining, you have something called a hippocampus inside your brain, and it regenerates your cells in the brain unless you complain all the time. If you complain all the time, it shrinks and it doesn't regenerate your brain cells. How about that?
Wait. Let's say that again, because I'm not sure if I got that. By complaining, I'm actually restricting my brain cells?
Yes.
And limiting them?
Yes. They don't
Why
regenerate.
would I do that? I'm crazy. Right? No, am I hearing that correctly? Because
you are hearing that correctly. That is science. The hippocampus actually shrinks the more you complain.
So that's almost like taking a pin and pricking myself like 28 times a day or 50. Am I right?
Yes.
Wow.
When I found this out, I thought, I'm not complaining about anything. I have nothing to complain about. It's good here.
You know, Anthony, one time I thought to myself, I tried to analyze some friends. I said, why are these 2 or 3 people so outstanding? We all get along with them. They're easy to fit into groups, etc. And I realized just what you were talking about here. Those people in their conversations, and some of them had good lives, some didn't, they didn't complain. They would talk about something in a neutral sense, but they didn't get on a kick where you had to root for their favorite team or political party, or pizza was better than hot dogs, or a cheeseburger was better than a plain burger. They didn't get on any soapbox, so to speak. And their conversation was interesting because it wasn't filled with the usual complaints. Oh, the taxes are too much. The weather is bad. Well, unless we can do something, as you said, that, what was it, radical acceptance?
Yeah.
Why get involved in that? And you can be so much more popular. You probably, if someone is having a popularity problem, they could probably increase their friends by at least, I'd say about 30% just by dropping the complaints.
Well, complaining also causes you to have relationship problems in your family and friends as well.
No, I thank you, Anthony. You've really given us some inspiration, and I love this book, one of my favorites, The Negativity Fast. It's by our guest, Anthony Iannarino, Iannarino. And Anthony, once again, just tell us that website.
I think the website is thesalesblog.com, or you can always go out and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I advise everybody get hold of this book. You can make your life happier just by realizing what Anthony's saying. It's an easy read. It's not technical. You'll enjoy it. And all your friends will start asking you how you got so smart. And you'll have to tell them, Anthony told me.
And you'll be a lot handsomer. You'll be richer. I mean, what else?
There you go. This is what we all want. That's the secrets of success. Anthony, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
To our audience, you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.